Continuing our sub 250 gram drone build, this time on Hak5.
Hello and welcome to Hak5. My name is Darren Kitchen.
My name is Shannon Morse.
It's your weekly dose of Technolust.
Welcome everybody to our another installment of the drone build.
Yes, this is very exciting. I can't wait to get this thing up in the air and flying.
Me too.
Oh man, we've got a lot to cover, but first, thank you to everybody that's been sending us stickers.
Yay! So I seriously have a slew of stickers over here. I mean, look at all these freaking things. There's so many.
Yes,
there's so many of them. Specifically, we got a postcard from one of our peoples. Oh, I think he sent us this BitTorrent Sync sticker.
Yay!
He says, I think his name is Joe. He says, huge fan of the show and met you guys at DEF CON last year. Now at BitTorrent working on Sync and saw your episode on it from last September. His handwriting is super fancy, so it's really hard to write. See you guys at DEF CON again soon. Yay! So
wow.
Thank you so much for the stickers.
Yes, we have so many. Yeah. I mean, people are just sending in the coolest stuff.
Oh, I think it was Aaron,
wallpapers. Got some Firefox action. Way to go, no starch.
And of course, I had to throw in my 1984 sticker because I had an extra.
Love those.
Springfield, Missouri. What?
We are also given an accept Bitcoin, which makes sense because we do on the Hack Shop.
Very cool.
For rectal use only. And this is from Baythreat.
Oh
so
my goodness,
we're going to get
these
up on the board. And thanks for continuing to send those stickers in. It's really fun.
Yes, thank you to everybody who sends these in.
Okay. So we'll do that at the end of the show.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and recap some of the things that we've been doing with our sub 250 gram quadcopter. If you haven't been following along and you're new to this series, essentially what we're doing is we are building our very own drone, aka model aircraft, quadcopter, whatever have you. And our specific build requirement is to build something that is under 250 grams or 8.8 ounces imperial, which will allow us to fly registration exempt in that the new FAA regulations that requires all pilots to register their drones, even though all the drones get the same serial number. So any craft over 8.8 ounces, if we build something that's under, then we can have as much fun as we want without registering.
So we've already done a list of the components that we are going to use in our build. We've also decided to build out the casing, I guess you could call it. What is this part?
The frame.
The frame, yeah, the frame. And we've also already installed the power controller right here, the power supply.
So what we've done so far is power distribution, the entire power system, so our electronic speed controllers, our motors, and let's recap what we lost from last week. So this right here is our flight controller. It's a Naze 32 board, and you can see there it's soldered up all nice. We're trying to...
It looks so good.
Thank you. We're trying to save as much weight as possible. So as opposed to here's an identical board, you'll notice that this one has all these little pin headers here, which makes it nice and easy to plug in these little what are called servo leads. These guys right here just kind of plug into those. Which makes it, plug and play-ish. However, we're trying to save as much weight as possible. So we're actually soldering these wires directly to the board here. And so we have our buzzer, we have our battery, we have our, this cable right here plugs into this guy right here, which is our serial receiver for our radio, and then
the lemon.
And then all of these white and black cables go to the various electronic speed controllers out on the arms that allow us to vary the speed of our motors, which is what really enables the flight. Unfortunately, we ran into a little bit of a problem.
Yeah, we did. So we learned the hard way why you always want to buy two, because two is one and one is none. So it turns out this board that we were using, something is shorted.
Yes. So you always want to make sure you check continuity. When those touch on your multimeter, you should be able to get a tone from it. And if I plug this, for example, into the various, like on the power distribution board, if I plug it into positive, negative, I don't get any sounds, which is good because obviously we would have a flaming mess if that were the case. But unfortunately, if we go ahead and actually look at the leads for our particular electronic speed controllers, so white is signal and black is ground.
Yep.
So that is happening.
Not supposed to do that.
We have a continuity problem. Actually, speaking of continuity problems, we actually lost footage from last week, which is why we hadn't covered that, which is why you didn't see us plug all of solder all of these together. And the reason that we have this issue is because we had initially soldered together the little pins, the 90-degree pins, and then we decided after the fact that we didn't want to do that. So I guess measure twice, cut once, or in this case, solder once. So now we're going to have to scrap this board. I would say we'd reflow it, but no one got time for that.
Yep, so we have to scrap the board, rewire all the cables or all the wires onto the new board, because luckily we do have a second flight controller. So today we're going to solder this and hopefully move on to the software installation.
That's the idea. Also, I want to point out at this point, basically what we're going to do is try to gut this and transfer it over to the new ones. We're giving our quadcopter a lobotomy, and to do that, I'm going to use my handy dandy pair of snips that say snubs on them. Yours probably don't, but I guarantee if they're owned by Shannon Morse, they do. Which means that you get the honors of Snippy Snippy.
Thank you. Stop stealing my Snippy Snippies, by the way. Okay, so should I snip closest to the board as I can?
As close as you can, because but not too close, because we're going to thread the needle. So
that's right, we are.
For instance, what we're trying to do here is keep this as clean as possible, and you'll notice that on the ends here it got kind of nasty.
Yeah,
so
it did.
We'll want to snip close, but not too close, because what we'll end up doing is stripping these back, and then we'll end up running them through the little holes.
Okay.
So this is kind of like pinhole through, kind of, and then we'll just solder them on the other end. So let's just go ahead and do that.
All right. Okay, so I have cut off all the wires on this one. We are going to resolder all the wires onto our new flight controller. Okay, now that we have soldered on all of our different wires, I'm going to check between signal and ground to make sure that we don't have any continuity errors, because that was our problem last time, and then voltage and ground on the last one. I should probably also check between each of the signal ones to make sure none of those have been tied together, because too much solder can happen, too much solder. And ground should be all connected.
Yeah, it's common ground amongst all of these.
Yep.
We should also point out here, so what we end up with is pins 1, 2, 3, and 4 are connected to our motors, and those motors go in with this being the front 1, 2, 3, 4. The other thing to consider is that this board has 6 pins here for our motors, which means it can be used for either a quadcopter or a hexcopter. Now, since we're not using pins, we don't have a 5th and 6th motor, pins 5 and 6 are kind of optional. Those can alternatively be used for gimbals if you want to do stabilized cameras, or in our case, we're actually just tying the voltage coming off our power distribution board, which is 5 volts out, and that is going to power our flight controller. So on pin 5, we just give it ground and the positive wire right there.
Okay, cool.
All right, so we have our electronic speed controllers soldered to the board now. Everything looks good continuity-wise. Next bits are to get our serial cable going back to our receiver for a radio, as well as our buzzer, which will be really handy when our battery starts to die, as well as also knowing what mode we're in. And then finally, this little lead right here, which is a actual voltage coming off the board, so the flight controller knows how much voltage is in our battery.
Okay, cool.
Let's do that.
All right.
So this is a flight controller that I already have set up with this Lemon RX, and so you'll notice something interesting about these two is that they have different colors.
Different colors!
Yes, because why standardize on anything? So in this case, the one on your left, the red is voltage, the black is ground, and the yellow is signal. But on this one, orange is voltage, black is ground, and white or gray is signal. So we just have to keep that in mind. And these are the locations where this needs to be soldered onto our board. So as you'll see over here, we actually get 3.3 volts off of the flight controller. Then on the top, on the pin next to the dot, is where we'll put our ground. And then on the back, on pin 4, is where we'll actually put the signal. So on this one, white will go on the back here. So we'll have white back there.
Okay.
Then we'll have our middle one, which is black, up here, and then yellow, which is our voltage. We'll go right here where it says 3.3, and it's going to be the one closest to the LEDs.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and do the voltage first, because that's the tiniest solder point. And you know what? We're going to go to the inside of the board, because I don't want this hanging off the outside of the board, where there's the potential for it to get snagged.
You got it?
Yes, go ahead. And we're going to snip that guy down when we're all done. There, that looks good.
Is it on there?
Yeah, it's on there.
Okay.
The trick with this is that I don't want it to get too close to the other components and short anything out.
Yeah.
So we will trim that. And then the next part, same exact idea, except this time on pin number 4. Right there. So why don't you go ahead and get some solder on pin 4. All right, we have a very pretty looking flight controller here. Everything's soldered down. We saved a lot of weight by doing that. Now the next part is we really need to make sure that we zip tie all of these little wires down, which is why I have all these tiny zip ties. The idea being, if any of this while we're working on it gets snagged or we go through some trees and a branch, we really don't want to rip those out.
Yeah, that'll be a pain in the butt.
So thankfully that's made pretty easy here in that we have lots of go faster holes, as I like to call them, in the frame, which saves on weight and also makes it go faster.
Of course.
So
everyone knows you run faster with a knife. I mean, duh.
And to that end, let's go ahead and get these just all zip tied down. So I just kind of like to scrunch them together and see where I can run this through, and see down here and then right back up. And I don't want to get this wire because it's a little tight, but this wire for sure.
And then I'm guessing you're going to clip the zip ties too?
Yes.
Okay.
So there we go. That's zip tied down fairly well. And so that also just makes it nice.
Yeah, it looks good.
Yes. And this specifically, like if you actually look at these wires right here, these are really delicate wires that are going to our receiver. And so there's the actual Molex pin for our receiver. So I can go ahead and plug that in.
Should we hot glue down any of those wires onto the board?
Typically I would. I think we're actually going to be okay because we've done a really great job soldering. And so this is the back of the quadcopter, and as you'll see, that's just going to stay in there real nice, just sitting like that, which is good, because what we end up with is we get this little antenna wire hanging out the back, which is good because this is a carbon fiber board, and carbon fiber inherently absorbs some radio frequency stuff. So we want to keep our receiver as far away from the board as possible. What's really interesting about this is a lot of the conventional wisdom that had applied to building much larger quadcopters doesn't apply to these micros, or it kind of goes out the window is another way to put it. So for instance, typically when people were to get into the scene, we'd tell them, go build a 450, because a 450, which is 450 millimeter rotor to rotor, would be like this big as opposed to a 250, or in this case a 210. And the reason that you would say that is because you get a lot more leeway. Right? You don't have to shave down a gram here and there. You can be a lot more messy with your build and still get it to fly. So that's nice, and so the conventional wisdom is like, oh, you have to have your receiver like 10 centimeters away from this component or that component, and there isn't 10 centimeters anywhere where you're not going to run into issues. So it's kind of funny to see, though, that conventional wisdom, when applied, practically speaking, with these smaller builds, doesn't.
You lost your lemon.
That wouldn't be the first time. It doesn't seem to apply. So anyway.
So do you want to zip tie the front too?
I do. Why don't you go ahead and zip tie those guys down while I find the lemon.
Alrighty.
Another thing to point out here in the build as we get everything kind of situated here, and I'll go ahead and plug our Lemon RX receiver in. Go ahead and come on, Molex. It's like USB. It works on the third try. There we go. All right, so get that Lemon RX kind of wedged in there. This right here is our buzzer. I'll pull the little tape off of it. And this buzzer chirps and will let us know the different indications of the state of the flight controller and
Cool.
our battery and such. We want to keep this because the buzzer as a speaker has a magnet and the flight controller has a magnetometer. We want to keep them as far away from each other as possible.
That makes sense.
I was mentioning like, oh, you know, conventional wisdom was like, you need to be 10 centimeters away. There's no possible way.
Yeah.
So we're just going to...
So as far as you can.
Yes, as far as we can. And we've got this zip tied down fairly well. I think that this should look okay. Maybe I would give it maybe one more zip tie because I don't want that to snag on anything.
Just right there?
Yeah, just right there. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'll just thread this through. That's looking pretty good.
That's really snug, yeah.
Yes. And once we get the standoffs plugged in here and here to actually put in the top plate, you'll see that this really will come together.
Cool.
And so I like the way that that's already just situating itself.
Yeah, it's looking good.
We got our Molex here to, or our JST connector for the battery. And this, which we are not using yet, but we already pre-wired in a red and black wire. That's our voltage and ground for 12 volts, and that will go to our FPV system.
Gotcha.
So you can see here, it's almost done. I mean, this is the front of the craft.
We still need propellers.
No.
It won't go very far.
No. That's the last step.
Oh.
We don't put the propellers on
Well, you do need
until
them eventually.
Our next step now is to get the software set up.
Yay!
So we're going to take a quick break, but when we get back, we're going to get the software set up without putting on our propellers.
Okay.
Who would have thought building an FAA registration-exempt quadcopter would be so much fun? That's the kind of great idea that deserves a great domain. And when you're thinking about getting yours up on the interwebs, do what Shannon and I do. Head over to domain.com. They have an epic domain discovery system that it gets your website up and online in no time. They're fast, they're affordable, they're easy to use. We love them, and they've been helping out Hak5 for years. So you know what? Even if you're not registering your domain over at domain.com using the coupon code HAK5, which saves you 15% at checkout, just go ahead and give them a tweet at domain.com and say, thanks for supporting Hak5 all these years. So when you think domain names, think domain.com.
We are now back, and it is time to set up the software.
This is very exciting. We are going to breathe life into this chip.
I hope it works.
It's going to work. This is a 5th generation NAS32 board, and we have a choice to make. There are a bunch of awesome different variants of these open source softwares that we can put on this to fly our quadcopter. You have base flight, you have beta flight, and you have clean flight. And I am going to just go ahead and go with my preference, which is clean flight.
Oh, okay. I feel like those would be really hard to confuse with each other.
I know, right? And all of these are like variations. There's lineage with things like multi-Wii, and we could talk about how Wiimotes used to be hacked for their accelerometers to do things like this. But we're just going to go with, here's what's available today. And I'm going to say clean flight's a good place to start.
Okay.
And then once you get a kind of a feel for what your flying style is, you'll figure out if you want to move to something like APM or base flight or beta flight or start doing crazy gymnastics in the sky, and who knows. But this is a very good starter firmware that makes a lot of the configuration easy.
Plug it in!
Okay, cool. So here we go. I have laptop set up. We have micro USB cable, which will interface with the with this NAS32 board.
Okay.
And the thing to keep in mind is that clean flight is very simple to set up in that there is a Chrome extension. Or a Chrome application, essentially.
That's funny.
So we can look at that over here. I've got that set up. Welcome to Clean Flight. So you just go ahead and grab this from the Google Play Store. And to get this going, basically what we'll need to do is, we see here our build, isn't it so pretty? And our micro USB port, I'm just going to go ahead and plug in this cable, which is connected to the computer here.
Yay, look at the pretty lights.
Yes, so we get some pretty lights.
Okay.
And if I go over to my computer now, you'll see that we have a device. If I ls/dev/ or actually I could just run dmessage, and you'll see at the very bottom, we have a CP2100, which is a serial device, and it shows up as TTY USB 0.
TTY USB 0, okay.
Which means if I ls/dev/TTYU, there it is.
Yep.
And what we'll need to do is change the mode there of that device. So sudo chmod /dev/TTY USB 0 to, we need to make it 666 because it is evil. And that will allow our Chrome extension here to be able to connect to it. Okay.
Okay.
So in CleanFlight, what you do is you just go ahead and it will automatically detect it.
Cool.
And it should be 115200 for the baud rate if you have a NAS32 5th generation board, which is very common. And you just click connect. All right, and we're connected. And if we take a look, it just goes ahead and dumps us here into CLI mode. So with CLI mode, it's kind of like we're...
Command line interface?
It is a command line interface. So basically, we have a serial connection to our flight controller, and it's like we're on its bash prompt, basically.
Yeah,
we're
I get that.
We're SSH'd in, as it were. We're serialed in.
Okay.
And so now we can issue some commands to it and find out some information about what software is running on it. We can get the values that are saved to it.
Okay.
So let's take a look. If I just go ahead and run help, I get a list of commands. And the ones that are going to be important to us are version. And I can see that this is Afro 32 CLI version 2.2 and the date and things of that nature.
Okay.
I can also, if I wanted to, run dump, and that will give me the values for all of these different...
I saw set pitch. Okay, so those are all the things you can set.
Right, so we see things
Throttle.
like minimum throttle and maximum throttle. And what's nice is these are in a way that the flight controller will understand, where you define aux, you define your features, and then you set variables. And so it's set and then a variable and then what it should equal.
Got it.
Now, here's the thing. We don't really care too much about any of those because this is not the flight controller that we want. We need to actually flash the firmware.
Oh,
and thankfully, doing this is made ridiculously simple with the CleanFlight Chrome extension.
Cool.
So all we have to do is come over to this section here. So you'll see I can't actually click on any of these. It says you need to upgrade your firmware before you can go to this tab.
Oh, okay.
Right? So how do you do that? Well, click disconnect, go to the firmware flasher. We go ahead and navigate to the firmware flasher section, and then choose from the drop-down our particular board, and that would be, we want the version of the CleanFlight 1.12, which is the latest, and then we choose what our different actual boards are. So you'll notice it supports things like the Alienware or CC3D board or the Lux Race board, and right here we will find NAS. So we'll click NAS, and the default settings are going to work for us. So what we'll want to do is, in this case, click Load Firmware Online down the bottom right. What that'll do is actually download that firmware for us, and it sees here's the latest version, we've got some release notes, and then finally we go ahead and click Flash Firmware.
Ah, okay.
And flashing was triumphant.
Finally.
Triumphant full. I think
we had to change out the laptop, which you'll probably notice on here, because the other one was basically borked.
It wasn't that it was borked. It actually, it turns out, it would have worked with that. And this is a tip for you there. Basically, if you want to take a look right here, you will find that there are two little pins on your NAS32 version 5 flight controller. They're right here. And right under them, silk screened, it says boot. So these two solder points, if you bridge them while you boot up, it'll put it into a bootloader mode where you can flash the firmware. I haven't typically needed to do this, but in this particular instance, it really didn't want to go into bootloader mode by default, so we actually had to basically bridge those using any piece of metal and then boot up the device and then click flash from the web interface. And once you do that, and then reconnect or restart CleanFlight, what you'll end up with is something like this.
Okay.
And you'll notice something, Shannon, if you just go ahead and pick up the board, it corresponds. Yes. It goes ahead and corresponds with the thing. So in fact, what you typically want to do is you set it down so it's flat.
Okay.
And this would be when we've got this all screwed down. So that would be flat. And you click on calculate or calibrate accelerometer. And that's finished. And we can also click calibrate magnetometer. Then we pick up the quadcopter and we have to spin it around in all axes. So if you look back at there, spinning it around in this axis, and in this axis.
This is really
Basically,
weird.
you just spin it around. Try to keep it away from magnets and belts and computers and other giant pieces of metal. But yeah, once we've done that, our accelerometer and magnetometer will be, there we go, that's finished.
That was weird.
All right. And now we have a nice little quadcopter ready to be set up.
Okay.
Which is really exciting because now we can go ahead and bind our controller to it. We haven't even talked about the ground station stuff. We're using a very hacked Devo 7E here, whose batteries are dead, which is fine because we're not getting that far yet. What I really want to show you, because we're going to have to loop back around and talk about the idiosyncrasies of controller setup. That's like its own beast. But what we really want to check are these motors.
Okay.
So here comes the fun part. If we come over to we can set up our ports and all of that. We'll be diving much deeper into the software, but just the basic configuration, it's in a quad hex configuration. There's also a bunch of others, whether it's a hex or a quad X versus a quad plus. I'll show you in the graphic there. That's kind of the idea. Versus a tricopter. I mean, this clean flight software will support many variations. I mean, look at that. Hex X looks awesome. But we're just going to go with a simple quad X, and what we're really interested right now is just to make sure that our motors are working.
Okay.
So we're going to come down here to motors, and I'm going to go ahead and arm this guy. So you have to check this box here that says, I understand the risks of enabling the motors. And there's an important reason for this. You would ask, like, well, aren't we plugging the propellers in? Not yet. We need to make sure that these motors are spinning in the right directions, and we don't want to do that with propellers on because we don't want the thing flying off the table and smacking us in the face. These spinny blades of death
It's a great point.
So in order to get these motors spinning, you'll notice that the flight controller is on because it's being powered over USB.
But you still need to power all the other servos,
and the motors in particular are not going to power off USB. So we need to go ahead and plug in, for the first time, our actual battery.
Power!
So here we go. Let's get our battery going, and we should hear a little tone. So the reason that we're hearing that beep actually is because it doesn't have a connection to our remote. Which is okay, because we're going to do a whole thing on binding our remote and configuring all of our expos and what that even means.
Later on.
So for right now, let's just kind of mute the beeping in post and deal with it, because we want to go ahead and get these motors spinning and check to see if they are in fact moving in the right direction. So basically check that box and then come over to here and plug in. So we check the box that says, I understand the risks, the propellers are removed, and then one by one we're going to come over and raise and lower for motors 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you'll notice you get a nice little graphic in the top left showing you what direction that they're going to spin. And then we're similarly going to just put our finger down and verify that these are in fact spinning that appropriate direction. So what we ended up with were the fact that all of our motors are spinning clockwise.
Ah, okay.
So what we need to do is we actually just need to, and this is really easy, the last kind of major part of our build is to get these guys spinning, or no, it was these guys. So everything is spinning clockwise. You'll notice that motors 4 and 1 spin clockwise, or are supposed to, and motors 2 and 3 are supposed to spin anti-clockwise. So how do we actually swap those? Well, quite simply, if you look at these little leads coming off of these, all we have to do is pull up this heat shrink and then just swap any of these two. So we could swap this one and this one, we could swap this one and this one. It doesn't matter. As long as we swap any two on both of these motors, then these guys will start going counterclockwise, and then we'll be ready to actually start binding our controller and getting flying.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and do that.
All right.
All right, this part is very exciting because we have now completed essentially our the build part of this for the moment, at least.
Okay.
I think one of the last things that we would want to do is probably come back around here with our heat shrink and start, you know, covering these guys up. There we go. That actually looks pretty good.
After we test them once more to make sure that the motors are turning the right ways.
In fact, that's what we're going to do now. So let's go ahead and plug it back into the computer. And so we just plug that guy into the micro USB. And then on the computer, we once again need to chmod that 666, click connect. We'll notice we're connected. Now we'll go ahead and go over to the motor section, check the box that says I understand, I don't have anything plugged in. Now we're going to plug in our battery and then raise up this master one right here.
Okay.
We can also individually go through and just test certain ones.
All right, great.
So that pretty
They're going the right ways. Yay!
Yes. The last bits are to go ahead and configure our PIDs, set up our receiver, and then we will be flying, and that's what we're going to do next week. I'm going to have you walking the dog.
Oh, I'm super stoked about that.
Yes.
But before we wrap up today's episode, I believe we have a short interview.
That's right.
And a short segment that Darren Kitchen invited on one of our friends, Alicia Webb from Secure Ninja, to talk to us a little bit about something that's kind of in the news right now. So we'll throw to that in just a second. But first, I want to remind everybody, of course, you can email us, feedback@hak5.org. You can also check out hak5.org for all the different shows that we do, and hakshop.com to check out all the different security products that we've been selling, which we really appreciate the support, by the way, for everything, everybody that supports us through there.
Right, we just had an awesome pen test with Hak5. It was great to see everybody coming out, and yeah, it was tremendous fun. I can't wait to do the next one.
That's why my voice is hoarse.
Yes, that's why I'm a little frazzled as well.
Yeah.
But hey, you know what? All things notwithstanding, we got a little bit behind by soldering together the other flight controller incorrectly. Yeah. But this way, you get to learn from our mistakes, and just means that next week we will be flying, and that's really exciting. We got our motors spinning in the right direction. Nothing's letting any magic smoke out.
Awesome.
Can't put the magic smoke back in. So let's go ahead and, since Alicia was down in town for RSA, find out about that whole Apple FBI thing and how things might have been different if it were an Android.
Peace.
Very unfortunate what happened with Evil Server and Shannon, but I assure you the show will continue on, and it's good to have you in the studio.
Thank you.
From Secure Ninja.
Thank you for having me, Secure Ninja, and myself. We are happy to be here. Absolutely. This is awesome. We're on Hak5.
Yeah, it's really fun to run into other security podcasters, especially during RSA. There's like a lot in the media right now about these guys.
Yep, that guy right there.
Yep.
It's the iPhone.
Mm-hmm. You guys know what we're talking about, Apple versus the FBI. But what I want to demo is this awesome bash script that makes this possible with the USB rubber ducky.
And how long does that take?
Actually, the bash script, it takes a lot less time to write than the payload that it generates.
Okay.
So what we need to do is generate a USB rubber ducky payload. And what that is basically like, it's a keyboard macro device. So you instruct it to type 0001, 0002, 0003, and it'll do all of that for you so that you can just then plug it into the phone and have it do the brute force for you.
Right.
But the ducky script to do that is like 65,000 lines long.
Okay.
So we can do it in one line of bash.
Really?
Yeah.
You can do this.
Check it out.
I can see it.
This is the giant line of bash here, and what it's doing is it's writing to this file here called androidbruteforce.txt. I'm going to take all of this away and start from the very beginning and start building it up. So let's actually just look at the very first command before we start tacking on all of this crap. The first thing you'll notice is we're doing an echo between 0000 and 9999. If we tack onto that with a pipe, an xarg statement right here, that's now going to write string in front of all of those. What this command does is it keeps building upon itself with these different pipes. So it's taking that, and we've echoed this out with this brace expansion. We've used xarg to put string in front of everything. We're now using sed, which will after every 5 attempts put the word wait. We keep adding on, and what's crazy is what this will end up doing is creating, with one liner of bash, it will create for us a ducky script. Now we're adding these delays, because we have to wait a moment before we type the next thing. And ultimately, when we've strung this all together, what we end up with is a ducky script where if I now make this 0000 through 9999, it creates this just massive script, which is so much faster than us writing it out by hand.
Right.
In fact, if I now pipe that to word count and list, this is a 62,000 line long text file.
Wow.
We can now take this and plug it into the phone, and it's going to do all of those attempts for us.
Every single 4-digit combination.
Yes.
Excellent.
And unlike a human, it's not going to forget, it's never going to have to take a bathroom break or anything.
Right, right. Okay, and it's going to wait 30 seconds in between each attempt?
Yeah, actually, here, let's go ahead and plug it in and see.
All right.
So what it's doing is typing 0001, 0002, and then so you get to this 30-second lockout here, where it's like, oh, you got to try again in 15 seconds. So what it's doing is actually pressing enter to keep that screen alive. it does that 30-second wait.
Oh, wow.
0005, 0006, 0007, and it's unlocked.
Whoa.
If your password is 9999, it's going to take 16 and a half hours.
Right, but if it's not.
If it's not. But what's crazy is at no point in time does Android ever self-destruct because you've tried too many times.
Right, that's why I'm saying the Apple iPhone is just a little bit more secure, I think.
I have to agree with you, unfortunately, right now, despite my open source ideals.
We need to get an Apple sticker right here.
Yeah, well, but you know what's kind of crazy about this, actually? If everyone had the ability, through open source or whatever means possible, to write their own, even if it was just kind of pathetic, but write their own part of the lock screen in addition to this, then not only would it be the First Amendment and the Fourth Amendment protecting the privacy of the device, but also the Fifth if you wrote your own software, because then you would be compelled to possibly incriminate yourself. You have been fastly trotting the globe. Do you want to tell us about AMA-TV and your adventures?
You mean this?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, AMA-TV is a travel channel. It's travel and it's also video production technology from the consumer space. So it's like the video equipment that you can actually drag around the globe, regular people like travel bloggers. But it was born out of Secure Ninja, the cybersecurity channel, because cybersecurity is so worldwide. We're traveling, to Dubai and Singapore for these trade shows. For cybersecurity shows, and I was like, well, I gotta just make travel videos on the side.
Well, what's been your favorite show?
My favorite episode
your favorite episode or destination?
Ooh, gosh, people ask me that all the time. I would say we did this whole Southeast Asia thing. We went to Singapore for it's either RSA or Black Hat, the Asia version. But from there we went to Bali for the weekend, and that was just like amazing. Bali, and then just Southeast Asia in general. I really want to go back there soon.
I'm Darren Kitchen.
And I'm Shannon Morse. Just kidding, I'm Alicia Webb.
Trust your technolust.
Trust your technolust.
No, but
Any trouble?
Oh, yes.
You guys! I keep wanting to give you presents, and you're scared of my last present.
Presents for you too.
You do?
Stickers.
Yes.
I gave it up. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Hello, welcome to Hak5. My name is Darren Kitchen.
And I'm Shannon Morse.
No, we talked about this. You're Alicia Webb.
Oh, I'm Alicia Webb.